So, considering how Futaba's second-tier persona is Prometheus, the god of the sun, I realize that those sun eyes are quite appropriate for this little bit here. At last, we're continuing on with this story. Make sure that my data isn't... Okay, yeah. The timer is a little clock I set myself for the time I need to do this before I go to bed. It's 11 o'clock that I'll be heading to bed. Anyway. It was dusk by the time he returned to LeBlanc. Ryuji and Sojiro were the only ones downstairs, the former flipping disinterestedly through his schoolbooks, the latter buffing the counter. Only Ryuji looked up when the doorbell jingled. Doorbell jingled. Freaking finally! Most of my fans will be asking me that when this comes out tomorrow, and they'll wonder where the hell I've been. In short, a lot. Apologies. Akechi lowered the hood. Had to make a few detours. There were crowds to avoid. They probably wouldn't have noticed you anyway. Unless you got paranoia syndrome, of course. Then every asshole in a 10-block radius would have come running to snap pictures. He peered at Akechi's face. Man, I recognize that look. Shimizu's ma really worked you over, huh? She was understanding, but lectures did happen, yes. Haha, I know the feeling. Moms, right? Sojiro's hand stopped mid-polish. In the long, pregnant pause that followed, Ryuji's grinning face carefully rearranged itself. Tell you what, he said, voice slightly strained. How's about we forget everything I just said? It's fine. Yeah, okay. He cleared his throat. What's up? Give me back my hoodie. Ryuji, if I were you, I would have said, what's bunkin'? Akechi took the hoodie off and handed it over. Ryuji held it up, studied it carefully for any signs of staining or stretching, and then pulled it back on, shoving his hands in the pockets. Least you took care of it. Futaba and Morgana are still upstairs. Everyone else went home. He headed for the door. I'm a turn in too. Night, boss. Get home safe, said Sojiro. Good night, Sakamoto, said Akechi. We'll contact you if there are any breaks in the investigation. Yeah, whatevs. He grabbed the door handle and stopped, back still turned to Akechi. And, about what happened last night. Things were pretty shitty for everyone. I understand. No hard feelings. Yeah, alright, okay. He opened the door. See ya. After he left, he exchanged a glance with Sojiro. The man shrugged, pointed upstairs, and got back to work. He went upstairs and found Futaba and Morgana seated side by side on Akira's bed, like twin sentinels. There you are. Gimme. Akechi handed over the flash drive and Futaba plugged it into her laptop and bent down low. The laptop screen printed 2 hard circles of light over her glasses. Her fingers spasmed as she cracked the joints and lowered them to the keyboard. Eeny, meeny, miny, mo, she said menacingly. I wonder how my search will go. You might as well take a seat, Morgana said. Akechi nodded, set down his briefcase, and took his place on the sofa. Morgana curled up and fell silent. Time passed. I'm being a ticking clock. The sunlight receded from the attic window, bruising purple and then black. Futaba's keys rattled like irregular machine gun fire. Sojiro came upstairs with curry plates, and Akechi ate his with murmured gratitude, making sure not to get any on the furniture. Futaba's own plate sat unacknowledged on the table, slowly congealing. Sojiro gave it a disapproving look when he returned. "You need to eat, Futaba," he said. "Later. Busy. Saving the world, probably." "It's late. Let's go home and—" "No. Busy." Rattle, rattle. "It's fine, boss," Morgana said. "I'll look after her." Sojiro turned to Akechi. "What did the cat say?" "He said that he'll look after Futaba." Morgana preened. "Finally, an honest translator." "Well, I appreciate the sentiment, but a cat... Oh. Well, I appreciate the sentiment, but a cat doesn't make for much of a guardian. Futaba, I'm not really comfortable leaving you alone with Akechi," Futaba finished. "Who cares? He's not going to do anything." "I'm not going to do anything," Akechi agreed. "Yep, that's what Futaba said." "I'll come home when I'm done." She irritably waved a hand. "Now go. Be gone." Sojiro's mouth formed a tight line. He drummed on the banister, apparently considering what would happen if he just took her laptop away and dragged her home. Akechi didn't give much for his chances of success, at least with both eyes intact. "Fine," he said. "But I'm not going to bed until you do. Have some consideration for that, at least." "I will. Good night, Dad." I had the biggest grin on my face for a moment. She really was diabolical. Akechi saw Sojiro melt under the warmth of that word. Then she stabbed a finger in Akechi's direction. "You! Say goodnight to him, now." Right. Good night, Mr. Sakura." "Good night, boss," Morgana said. Sojiro grunted and stomped downstairs. The light from below went out, and the door opened, then closed. Futaba got back to work. Akechi settled into the cushions, lids growing heavy. He tried to forget the afternoon spent in that dirty and sun-soaked kitchen, pushing it away from his mind. Until the night seeping in through the attic window crawled over his vision and covered up everything. "Ah!" Futaba's scream woke him up. Her voice ripped through his head like a drill bit, and his body convulsed hard enough to nearly lift him bodily from the couch. As his heart jackhammered in his chest, he saw Morgana propel himself from the bed in a similar fashion, his fur standing on end like he just plugged his tail into a light socket. Futaba had gripped her hair in her fists and pulled hard, the shriek trailing from her mouth like the whistle from a tea kettle. "What happened? What's wrong?" "Nothing! Zero! A big fat goddamn goose egg! I'm at 50% battery life, and this asshole's got absolutely nothing!" She bent over and clamped her hands on her laptop screen, as if trying to throttle answers from it. "Do you have any idea how frustrating it is for me to not get what I want from a computer for hours? It's worse than waiting to sneeze!" Okay. Let's just calm down, Akechi said. Morgana had retreated to the edge of the bed, frantically looking down his fur. "Do you mean the hard drive was wiped?" "No! That at least would give me something to suspect. And it's not like I couldn't recreate most of the data anyway unless he took a hammer to the thing. It's not blank, it's boring. How can someone trying to destroy the world be so boring?" "Tell me what you found. Maybe it'll help get your thoughts in order." Fine. Fine. She breathed deep, got herself under control. I mean, I had a bad feeling from the start about this data. The OS was installed in August of last year, so the laptop was probably a present for getting into Kosei or something. That's not a lot of time to build up evidence. But this is ridiculous. All his download folders are blank, and his document folders are full of nothing but schoolwork. I skimmed his essays, and the writing's okay from what I can tell, but it's not like there's a revenge diary or a 10-point plan for dominating the world or anything in there. Nearly all of the software on this thing came out of the box. There are library computers with more incriminating crap than this. What about online? Could you obtain his search records? Yeah, his cookies were all there. Most of my time was spent putting all that together. And eating the cookies. If the cookies were the actual chocolate chip baked cookie kinds, and not the kind of cookies on the internet that I don't know much about. She made another few clicks on her laptop. But I got nothing. He has the browsing history of an old man. Some news websites, a couple of environmental blogs. He's been to a few message boards, but it's all general use stuff, nothing big. I hacked his email, and most of his messages are either spam or library book notices. Apparently he's been studying Renaissance-era theater for his summer homework. I know, riveting stuff. Guess Kosei's on a Shakespeare kick too. Yeah, Futaba was quoting Shakespeare at the beginning of this whole mess. His search terms don't deviate much from any of this. Oh, except he looked up the Phantom Thieves a lot last year. Went to the fan site too. That could be something. Not really. Nearly all of Tokyo was hanging off our butts for one reason or another. Either they were cheering us on or really wanted to tell everyone how much we sucked. And the fan site was anonymous, so I couldn't even know if Shimizu posted anything on there. She huffed. I thought Mishima was an NPC, but he's Mr. Personality compared to this kid. At least he'd have some funky stuff to laugh at in his computer. Who? Doesn't matter. Never mind. She looked at him. It pains me to say this, but I think I'm out of luck. What now? Inari said he'll ask around at Kosei, but I really don't expect much to come of that. Something about his 1,000-yard stare makes people clam up. Do we get Shimizu's phone, maybe? Morgana had finally regained his composure. That would be the next logical step. Maybe he just used his computer for work. His cell phone might have some more noteworthy material. I didn't see any trace of it at his apartment, Akechi said. And I would very much prefer to avoid returning there, if possible. Oh, right, you got made. What a shame. But Akechi, you need to think hard about what you saw at their home. The missing piece has to be in there somewhere. I hope so, said Futaba. All the targets I saw were super obvious scumbags right from the start. Including you, she added offhandedly. You'd think that with Shimizu there'd be something huge that we're missing. You're sure that his parents were on the level? Akechi fought hard, then shook his head. I only met his mother, but she made it clear that the relationship with Shimizu was healthy enough. Maybe they were a little troubled by him. He's apparently very introverted. But I saw no evidence of abuse or neglect. And you think her testimony is trustworthy? Morgana asked. Yes, I do. She had no reason to lie. Even less after my cover was blown. She actually became offended on my behalf. She thought my appearance was due to mistreatment by the police. He smiled a little sheepishly. I don't think she was entirely in her right mind, to be honest. She'd been bottling up her stress over Shimizu's condition for a while. She even offered to let me use his... Morgana and Futaba both saw his face go slack. They said something, but he didn't hear. It was as though his mind had been some hunk of barely functioning machinery, choked with rust and grime. Corrosion, maybe, from spending too long at sea. A cogwheel had broken loose. The wheels would not turn. But now the cog had dropped in, and the entire machine burst into life. In that first moment, he believed he'd grasped the answer. In the next moment, he knew the answer couldn't possibly be anything else. My God, he thought. Is this how real detectives feel? No wonder the job is so popular. He got out Futaba's phone. It's me. Is anyone still awake? Good evening, Akechi. I was just about to turn in. What is it? Sorry to bother you this late, but I wanted to say this now. At least the others can catch up on it tomorrow morning. I know the last keyword. What? Truly? What? Gasped Morgana. What? How the hell am I not getting first dibs on this? I busted my ass for hours. I am literally in the same room as you. Akechi, are you certain of this? I'm unable to test it for the reasons I mentioned earlier, but I'm almost positive. Let me have the night to think it over. I'll tell you all the next time we assemble at LeBlanc. A bit dramatic, don't you think? It's been a long day. Allow me to indulge. Futaba was vital in this discovery as well, of course. Thank you! Finally! Alright, calming down. If he wants to hold off on spilling the beans, then that's fine. But we ought to get a definite yes/no on this first thing in the morning, so we can prep. As for me, all my batteries are just about nil, so I'm done for today. It may be a long night for me as well. I think we'd all better turn in. And Akechi, regardless of what happens with the last keyword tomorrow, good job. It appears that I must accelerate work on a particular project of mine. I will retire to bed as soon as it is complete. Good night, everyone. I believe it's time I returned Futaba's phone. Good night. Futaba's laptop snapped shut, and she held out her hand. Akechi tossed the phone over. She pocketed it and stood up, flanked by Morgana. Time to head home so Sojiro can tuck his geriatric butt into bed. Hey Mona, what are the odds he's snoring in front of the TV right now? I wouldn't want a bad-mouthed boss. Pretty good then. Off we go. She set off for the stairs and then stopped. Akechi looked up at her. She was staring at the far wall, her hair a fiery curtain over her face. The cafe settled and creaked around her, as though she were the nucleus allowing it to maintain its form. I hate you, you know, she said quietly. I'm pretty sure I'll always hate you. That's fair, Akechi said. I wonder. Without warning, she went over to the sofa and sat down beside Akechi, pulling up her knees into her typical perching position, the laptop clutched to her chest. Both he and Morgana stared at her, like she'd just grown a second head. Akira's probably dying, she said. I know, but we still have time. We'll save him. Yeah, and I think he knows that too. He knows that you will, Akechi said. He doesn't think of me that way, but it's fine. She glanced at him, her glasses winking. Then she went back to staring at the wall. You never figured it out, huh? Figured out what? When you woke up back in the engine room. How long do you think you were out for? Days? A week? Impossible. You would have starved, or maybe just bled to death. Well, I had other things on my... Akira was really insistent that we send the calling card the day after we ran into you. Like, he didn't shout or anything, but he got intense about it. You know what I mean. Akechi indicated that he did. And when we ran into Shido, his shadow was easily the toughest I'd seen, but Akira freaking curb-stomped him. I almost started to feel sorry for the guy. At first I thought it was because of the way Shido screwed him over before he came to Tokyo. Now I wonder if it was something else. What? You think he took up arms to avenge me? He scoffed. You're imagining things. Maybe. I know he didn't like you much. We basically talked endless smack about you all year. But Akira kind of sucks at hating people, in case you didn't notice. That fight we had with you messed up his head pretty badly. Morgana had quietly retreated to a far corner of the room, tail curled around him, watching on. Can I ask you something? Go ahead. Why didn't you just die? He turned his head at that, but Futaba's pose hadn't changed. She kept her disinterested gaze on the wall, chin on her knees, toes flexing. She might have just asked him the name of his favorite TV show. The TV show named Death. You spent a whole year in that Dead Sea place. No way to leave, no one around except for Shimizu, and he's definitely not friendly. No one to come back to, either. So why didn't you die? It would have been easy. I could ask you the same thing, he said, perhaps more sharply than he'd intended. I know what happened to you after Shido and I dealt with your mother. Your shut-in years. Did you never consider alternative solutions? Yeah, sometimes. That would have been easy, too. Even locked up in that room, all I would have needed was a belt and a doorknob. In his corner, Morgana winced. Mostly I pictured the look that would have been on Sojiro's face if he'd come in and see me like that. Kept scaring me off the idea. Who knows how long it would have worked, though. That makes sense. And it's not as though I had the same excuse. He fought it over. I don't know. For a long time I just kept going on out of spite. At the foster homes I learned that society at large would like nothing more than for people like myself to disappear. I refused to give them the satisfaction. That sort of behavior was habit-forming. Drove me to keep living even when no one was left to care. And I was afraid of ending up like all the other bodies down there, just sinking into the water. No one to even know if I was gone. But after I ran into Akira again, I became more accepting of it all, I suppose. Our reunion wasn't exactly a pleasant one, but I want to believe it justified all the time I spent in the Dead Sea, if nothing else. I never would have seen him again if I hadn't fallen so far. He bent over, lacing his fingers. It's the same here. All those things I did, even if I did feel guilty for them, remorse alone would be worthless. But I still want something good to come out of it. And for all my bluster, the Phantom Thieves seem to have a much clearer idea of right and wrong than myself. I'm not one of you. Akira won't ever think of me as one of you. I gave up that chance a long time ago. But I still have a role to play. You've changed. Huh. A change of heart, maybe? Maybe, she said. So I'm not sure if it's okay to hate you. Because I don't think you're the same person who killed my mom anymore. It doesn't work that way, Futaba. Not that I don't appreciate the thought, but I can't just banish who I used to be. I guess. But you can't get rid of who you are now either. She stood up. Anyway, tired and bored. Night. She went down the stairs, leaving him dumbfounded. Morgana sidled up to him. Do you, want me to stick around? Please leave. Well, excuse me for asking, he huffed, but he sounded grateful. Then he said, Go to sleep, Akechi. And take the bed, for crying out loud. No one else is using it. He bounded down the steps, and then Akechi was alone. The door's jingle echoed briefly in the empty cafe. He sat with his hands on his lap, face stony, studying the patterns in the woodwork walls. Then he took out his phone, selected the meta-nav. That seething red eye filled the screen. Outside, Yongenjaya had gone still, its residents sinking once again into their restless, paranoid sleep. There was no transformation within him, no revelation that had sundered him to his core. The people who'd had their treasure stolen were always reduced to weeping wrecks. He'd had a few slips here and there, but he liked to think he hadn't fallen apart quite that severely just yet. He cast about for memories of Wakaba Ishiki, of Kunikazu Okumura, of all the shadows who'd prostrated before him with his gun to their heads, and still didn't know what he should feel or why. That numbness in him still chewed up everything, but its teeth seemed to have grown duller. There was something glimmering there, deep inside the hole. Target, he said. Goro Akechi. Conditions have not been met. He sighed and pocketed the phone again. Akechi rose and turned out the light. Imagine if Akechi was a palace ruler.